He stood there, champagne flute in hand, the king of his own victory. The divorce was final. Mark Callahan had everything: the sprawling mansion, the lucrative business, the freedom he craved. His ex-wife Ava was left with nothing but a paltry settlement and her worthless little hobbies. He had won, or so he thought. 1 year later, at the most exclusive investment summit of the year, Mark watched as the legendary billionaire Nathaniel Reed took the stage. But it wasn't the billionaire who made his blood run cold. It was the woman he introduced as his star protégé, the brilliant mind behind the next tech revolution. Ava. The air in the lawyer's conference room was stale thick with the scent of expensive leather and unspoken resentments. It was a sterile beige room designed for the methodical dismantling of lives, and it was working its cold magic perfectly. Ava Monroe stared at the pen lying beside the thick stack of documents. Its gold nib gleamed under the recessed lighting, looking more like the tip of a dagger than a writing instrument. Her lawyer, a kind but weary woman named Susan, gave her a gentle nudge. "Ava, it's the last step. Just sign, and this will all be over." Over. The word echoed in the hollow space where Ava's heart used to be. Across the polished mahogany table, her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, Mark Callahan, sat back in his chair. He wasn't just relaxed, he was triumphant. A small, smug smile played on his lips as he swirled the amber liquid in the crystal glass his lawyer had poured for him. He looked every bit the victor, dressed in a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than the car Ava would be driving away in. "Don't rush her, Susan," Mark said, his voice smooth and condescending. "It's a big moment for Ava, the moment she officially gets to stand on her own 2 feet. It'll be an adjustment." Every word was a carefully aimed dart. For 10 years, Mark had cultivated the narrative that Ava was fragile, dependent, and incapable without him. He had managed their finances, made all the major decisions, and gently mocked her attempts at independence. Her ideas for a small business based on a unique software she was developing in her spare time were dismissed as cute hobbies or little projects to keep you busy. Now, in this final act of their marriage, he was cementing that narrative. The settlement was a joke, a calculated pittance designed to be just enough to prevent a lengthy court battle, but not enough for her to ever be comfortable. He was keeping the house, the vacation properties, the stocks, and the company he had built partially with the inheritance from her parents. She was getting a used car, a small lump sum that would barely cover a year's rent, and her freedom. To Mark, it was a lopsided trade that proved his superiority. Ava's hand trembled as she picked up the pen. Her gaze fell on the final page. Her name, Ava Monroe, felt foreign. For a decade she had been Ava Callahan, an extension of Mark, an accessory to his success. Who was Ava Monroe? Mark seemed to think she was a nobody, a ghost who would fade into obscurity. A part of her, the part he had so carefully conditioned, was terrified he was right. Just think of it. Ava, Mark continued, leaning forward as if sharing a generous secret. No more responsibilities. You can focus all your time on your, what is it you call it, your digital organizer project. See, every cloud has a silver lining. The mockery was blatant. He knew she called it the Aura Protocol, a sophisticated system for intuitive life management she had been passionately coding for years. He called it a digital organizer to diminish it, to make it sound like a cheap App Store knockoff. That project was the one part of her soul he hadn't managed to crush. In the lonely hours while he was out at business dinners or networking events, she had poured herself into the complex algorithms and elegant user interface, creating something she knew deep down was special. Her eyes met his. The smugness in his gaze was the final push she needed. It wasn't just about ending the marriage anymore. It was about surviving his victory lap. She thought of the countless nights he'd come home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. She thought of the way he'd belittle her in front of their friends, dressing his insults up as jokes. She thought of the crushing discovery of his long-term affair, the final undeniable proof that their entire life together had been a lie. The humiliation, the grief, the anger, it all swirled within her, hardening into a quiet, cold resolve. She would not let him see her break. Not now. Not ever. With a steady hand that surprised even herself, she signed her name. The ink was black and final. Ava Monroe. She pushed the documents across the table. "It's done," she said, her voice clear and even. Mark's smile widened. He clapped his lawyer on the back. "Excellent. Well, Ava, I wish you the best." "Truly." He stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "I'm sure you'll land on your feet." Eventually. He didn't offer a handshake, just a dismissive nod. As he and his lawyer began gathering their things, laughing about a dinner reservation at an exclusive restaurant, Ava felt a strange sense of calm descend. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was now overlaid with something else, a flicker of defiance. He thought he had taken everything. He had the assets, the power, the public image of the successful man shedding his dependent wife. He thought he had won. Let him. He had left her with the one thing he couldn't value and therefore couldn't take the contents of her mind. He had left her with Aura. As she walked out of that beige room, leaving the life of Ava Callahan behind forever, she clutched her worn leather notebook filled with a decade of code, ideas, and dreams a little tighter. Mark could have the past. She was now, terrifyingly, thrillingly, in possession of her future. The door to apartment 3B clicked shut with a sound that was anything but reassuring. It was a flimsy, hollow sound, a stark contrast to the solid, authoritative thud of the oak door at the mansion she used to call home. Ava leaned against it, the single box of her most personal belongings at her feet, and surveyed her new reality. The apartment was small, a shoebox compared to her previous life. The living room bled into a kitchenette, and a single window looked out onto a grimy brick wall. The air smelled of dust and the faint, lingering aroma of the previous tenant's curry. This was it. This was what was left after 10 years of marriage to a man who promised her the world. The first few weeks were a blur of disorientation and grief. Every morning she would wake up with a jolt of panic, her heart racing as she momentarily forgot where she was. The silence was the loudest thing in the apartment. At the mansion there had always been the hum of the pool filter, the distant sound of the gardener, the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Here the silence was absolute, broken only by the sirens that wailed in the distance or the muffled arguments of her neighbors through the thin walls. Loneliness was a physical presence, a cold companion that sat with her at the small, wobbly kitchen table as she ate instant noodles from a ceramic bowl, one of the few things she'd brought with her. Her friends, who were really Mark's friends, had sent a few half-hearted texts after the divorce. "Thinking of you, and let us know if you need anything." But the invitations to dinner parties and charity events had stopped abruptly. She was no longer part of their world. She was social collateral damage. Mark's final words in the lawyer's office haunted her. "I'm sure you'll land on your feet." Eventually. The condescension in his tone was a poison that seeped into her thoughts. Doubt began to fester. What if he was right? What if she wasn't capable of making it on her own? She had a degree in computer science, but she hadn't worked a real job in a decade. The tech world moved at lightning speed. She was a relic. One evening, after another day of fruitless job searching online, the weight of it all became too much. The rejection emails, the mounting bills, the suffocating loneliness, it all crashed down on her. She curled up on the lumpy second-hand sofa and wept. It was a raw, guttural sob for the life she had lost, the love she thought she had, and the future she couldn't see. In the depths of her despair, her eyes landed on the cardboard box tucked into a corner. It was filled with her old notebooks, hard drives, and scribbled diagrams, the entire history of the Aura protocol. She had barely looked at it since the move, too pained by Mark's dismissive words. "Your cute little hobby." Drained of tears, she felt a different emotion begin to stir anger. A hot, clarifying rage. How dare he? How dare he make her feel so small, so worthless? How dare he take the best years of her life and then toss her aside like she was nothing? Fueled by this newfound fire, she walked over to the box and pulled out the top notebook. She ran her fingers over the worn leather cover. Inside were the first lines of code she had ever written for Aura, a messy scrawl of ideas and possibilities. It wasn't just a project. It was a diary of her intellect, a testament to a part of herself she had kept hidden from Mark's critical gaze. She retrieved her old laptop, an outdated model he had insisted was good enough for her, and plugged it in. The screen flickered to life and she navigated to the files she hadn't touched in months. There it was, Aura. She opened the source code, and as her fingers found their familiar rhythm on the keyboard, something inside her shifted. The code was elegant. The logic was sound. The concept was brilliant. She knew it was. Mark's voice of doubt in her head began to fade, replaced by the quiet confidence of her own expertise. She had built this. It was complex, intuitive, and powerful. It was more than a digital organizer. It was a predictive, adaptive system designed to streamline and enhance a person's life by learning their habits and anticipating their needs. It was revolutionary. That night, for the first time in months, she didn't cry. She coded. With every line she wrote, she wasn't just building a program, she was rebuilding herself. The hum of the laptop replaced the suffocating silence. The logical flow of the algorithms provided an order that her life desperately lacked. She worked through the night, fueled by black coffee and a burning desire to prove him wrong, to prove herself right. The apartment was still small. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time since she had signed those papers, Ava felt a flicker of hope. Mark had left her in the ashes of their former life, but he had overlooked the one thing: he could never take the spark of her own fire. And in the quiet solitude of apartment 3B, that spark was about to be fanned into a flame. The next few months were a grueling test of endurance. Ava established a new disciplined routine. Her days were divided into two starkly different realities. From 9 to 5, she was a gig worker taking on freelance data entry and basic website maintenance jobs that paid just enough to keep the lights on and buy groceries. It was soul-crushing, mind-numbing work, a constant reminder of how far her career had fallen. But from 5 o'clock onwards, her tiny apartment transformed into the headquarters of Aura Innovations, a company that for now consisted only of her aging laptop and a mountain of ambition. She used the pittance she earned from her freelance work to pay for server space and software development tools. Every spare dollar from her settlement was funneled into her project. Dinner was often a luxury. Sleep was a distant memory. She refined the code, optimized the algorithms, and designed a sleek, minimalist interface. She poured everything she had into creating a working prototype, a functional demonstration of Aura's potential. The system was more than just a calendar or a to-do list. It integrated with every aspect of a user's digital life: emails, social media, finances, health apps, and used a proprietary machine learning algorithm to not just organize, but to anticipate. It could suggest the most efficient route to a meeting based on real-time traffic, pre-order groceries when it sensed you were running low, and even curate a personalized news feed based on the topics you were actively working on. It was a true digital assistant. The problem was no one knew it existed. She was an unknown woman with no connections, no track record, and no funding. She submitted her business plan to a dozen venture capital firms and was met with a wall of silence, or worse, form letter rejections. "Not a fit for our portfolio at this time," they all said. The words were a polite mask for what she suspected they were really thinking. Who was this woman coming out of nowhere with such a bold idea? The rejections stung, each one a fresh jab at her already bruised confidence. Mark's voice would creep back in at her lowest moments, whispering that she was in over her head, that she was chasing a silly dream. Refusing to give up, she changed her strategy. Instead of aiming for the giants, she started looking for smaller local opportunities. She found one online, the Innovate Local Tech Showcase, a small competition for aspiring entrepreneurs in the city. The grand prize was only $5,000, but it came with something far more valuable: a chance to pitch to a panel of local investors and tech journalists. It was terrifying. The thought of standing on a stage presenting her life's work to a room of strangers made her stomach churn. But she knew she had to. This was her one shot. She spent a week preparing, barely sleeping, as she perfected her presentation. She bought a simple, professional-looking blazer from a thrift store, her one concession to looking the part. The day of the showcase was a chaotic blur. The event was held in a crowded, noisy university auditorium. Ava felt like an imposter among the slick, confident young men in hoodies who spoke a dizzying dialect of tech jargon. She was older, she was a woman, and she was alone. When her name was called, she walked to the stage on legs that felt like jelly. She fumbled with the microphone, her hands shaking. She could see the judges looking at their phones, their expressions bored and impatient. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak, her voice trembling at first. But then something shifted. As she started explaining the architecture of Aura, the passion took over. She spoke about the code, the potential, the way it could seamlessly integrate into people's lives. She ran the live demo showing how Aura could intelligently reschedule an entire day with a single command, learning and adapting in real time. The judges started to look up from their phones. One of them, a notoriously tough local investor named Robert Peterson, leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. The room grew quiet. When she finished, there was a moment of silence followed by a smattering of polite applause. Ava's heart sank. It wasn't enough. During the Q&A, Peterson grilled her. He picked apart her revenue model, questioned her scaling strategy, and challenged the uniqueness of her algorithm. Ava, however, was on solid ground. She had spent years thinking about these very questions. She answered each one with calm, data-backed precision. She didn't win. The prize went to a flashy social media app developed by 2 college students. As they accepted the oversized check, a wave of disappointment washed over Ava. It was over. She had failed. As she was packing up her laptop, a shadow fell over her. It was Robert Peterson. "Tough break," he said, his expression unreadable. "It's okay," Ava replied, trying to sound gracious. "It was good experience." "Good experience," he scoffed. "You were the only one in that room with a truly disruptive idea. Those kids who won their app will be obsolete in 6 months. What you have, that has legs." Ava stared at him, stunned. "But your business plan is a mess," he continued bluntly. "You're thinking too small. This isn't a local app, Miss Monroe. This is a global platform. You need serious capital, a real team, and a strategy that doesn't involve $5,000 pitch competitions." He pulled out a pen and scribbled a name and number on the back of a business card. "This is a friend of mine. He runs a mentorship program for seed-stage startups. Tell him I sent you. He'll tear your plan to shreds, but if you listen, he'll help you build it back up into something fundable." He handed her the card. "Don't give up on this," he said, his eyes meeting hers with a surprising intensity. "You've got something real." And then he walked away. Ava looked down at the card in her trembling hand. It wasn't a check, it wasn't a trophy, and it wasn't a promise of success. But it was something more important. It was validation. A single powerful glimmer of hope from someone who knew what they were talking about. For the first time, she wasn't just working on a project. She was the founder of a company with potential. The fire inside her roared back to life, brighter and stronger than ever before. Following Robert Peterson's advice, Ava plunged into a grueling 6-month mentorship program. The man whose name was on the card, a grizzled tech veteran named David Chen, was just as ruthless as Peterson had promised. He dismantled her business plan, her marketing strategy, and even her presentation style. He forced her to think bigger, to be bolder, and to defend her vision with unshakable data and confidence. It was the most challenging and transformative period of her life. She emerged with a polished pitch deck, a robust financial model, and a newfound sense of command. David, impressed by her resilience and the brilliance of her product, made a call. "There's a networking event next week," he told her. "The Digital Vanguard Mixer. It's not for fundraising, it's for networking. All the big players will be there, but they're not looking for pitches. They're looking for conversations. Go talk to people. Be interesting. Don't sell, connect." The event was held in a sleek, glass-walled skyscraper overlooking the city. The atmosphere was a world away from the university auditorium. Here the air buzzed with quiet power and influence. Men and women in impeccably tailored clothes spoke in hushed tones, their conversations punctuated by knowing laughter. Ava, in her best thrift store blazer, felt her old insecurities creep back in. She was a guppy in a tank full of sharks. She grabbed a glass of sparkling water, her hand shaking slightly, and tried to look like she belonged. She made a few awkward attempts at conversation, but most people's eyes glazed over the moment they realized she wasn't a name they recognized. She was about to retreat to a quiet corner when a man standing near the window looking out at the city lights caught her eye. He was older than most of the tech prodigies in the room, perhaps in his late 40s, with silvering temples and a calm, commanding presence that set him apart. He wasn't working the room or trying to impress anyone. He was just observing. Something about his quiet confidence drew her in. Taking a breath, she walked over. "The city looks different from up here, doesn't it?" she said, her voice steadier than she expected. The man turned and she found herself looking into a pair of remarkably intelligent and perceptive eyes. "It does," he said, his voice a low, pleasant baritone. "It makes you feel like you can see the whole system working, all the interconnected parts." It was an unusual, thoughtful response. Intrigued, Ava replied, "I think about that a lot, how systems work, how to make them more efficient, more intuitive." A flicker of interest crossed his face. "In what context?" "In the context of our daily lives." Ava said, the passion for her project bubbling up. "We have all this technology meant to simplify things, but mostly it just creates more noise, more digital clutter. We're not managing our technology, it's managing us." The man nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on her. "That's a very astute observation. Most people here are focused on creating the next piece of noise. How would you fix it?" For the next 20 minutes, they stood by the window completely engrossed in conversation. Ava forgot she was supposed to be networking. She didn't mention her company, her pitch deck, or her need for funding. She just talked about her ideas, her philosophy on the intersection of technology and human behavior. She spoke of creating a system that didn't just manage tasks, but understood intent, a technology that felt less like a tool and more like an extension of one's own mind. The man, who introduced himself only as Nathaniel, listened intently. He didn't interrupt. He just asked sharp, insightful questions that pushed her to articulate her vision more clearly than ever before. He understood the complex, theoretical underpinnings of her work in a way no one else had. "This predictive algorithm you're describing," he said, "it would require a level of machine learning that's still largely theoretical. The processing power alone would be immense." "It is," Ava agreed. "But I've developed a new compression model for the data sets. It streamlines the learning process, making it faster and far more efficient. It's the core of the whole system." He looked at her, a strange, impressed expression on his face. The flow of their conversation was interrupted when a young, eager entrepreneur approached them. "Mr. Reed, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say what an honor it is." Ava's blood went cold. Reed, Nathaniel Reed. She wasn't just talking to some thoughtful guest. She was talking to the Nathaniel Reed, the legendary billionaire investor, a titan of the tech industry, known for his Midas touch and his almost mythical ability to spot the next big thing. He was the keynote speaker at nearly every major tech conference, a man whose opinion could make or break a company with a single sentence. Nathaniel gave the young man a polite but brief nod before turning his attention back to Ava. "My apologies," he said, as if the interruption was an inconvenience. He pulled a simple, elegant business card from his pocket. It had nothing on it but his name, a phone number, and an email address. "I am genuinely intrigued by your ideas, Ms. Monroe." Ava managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. "Ava Monroe." "Ms. Monroe," he said, handing her the card. "My assistant will be in touch to schedule a meeting. I'd like to hear more about this compression model." He gave her a small, enigmatic smile, and then turned to melt back into the crowd, leaving Ava standing by the window, her heart pounding against her ribs. She looked down at the simple card in her hand. It felt impossibly heavy, like the weight of a future she had never dared to imagine. She hadn't pitched. She hadn't sold. She had just been herself. And it had been enough. The email arrived the next morning as promised. It was from Nathaniel Reed's executive assistant inviting Ava to his office for a meeting the following Wednesday. The address wasn't a flashy corporate headquarters, but a discreet private office in a historic downtown building. Ava spent the next week in a state of controlled panic and feverish preparation. This wasn't a local pitch competition or a mentorship session. This was the major leagues. She rehearsed her presentation until her voice was raw, pouring over every line of code and every financial projection, determined to be ready for anything. On the day of the meeting, she walked into a space that was the epitome of understated power. The office was lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with worn volumes on history, philosophy, and science. There was no giant desk, only a comfortable seating area around a low wooden table. Nathaniel Reed was sitting in an armchair, dressed not in a suit, but in a simple cashmere sweater, reading a book. He looked up as she entered and smiled warmly. "Ava, please come in. Can I get you some coffee?" His disarming demeanor immediately put her at ease. The meeting was nothing like she had expected. There was no panel of stone-faced executives. It was just him. And he didn't want to see her pitch deck. "I've read your business plan," he said, gesturing to a tablet on the table. "David Chen sent it over. It's impressive. Thorough. But plans are just theories. I want to understand the architect. I want to understand you." For the next 3 hours they talked. He asked her about her background, her education, why she had stopped working, and what drove her to create Aura. Ava found herself telling him everything, not the curated professional version, but the real story. She told him about her passion for coding, her decade-long marriage, the constant belittling of her ambitions, and the crushing loneliness after the divorce. She explained how Aura wasn't just a business idea, it was her reclamation of her own identity. Nathaniel listened without judgment, his expression one of deep, empathetic concentration. When she was finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Many people can build a product, Ava," he said finally, his voice soft. "But very few people build something from their own resilience. The most powerful companies aren't born from spreadsheets. They're born from a founder's obsession to solve a problem they understand intimately. You're not just building an app. You're trying to create order out of the chaos you've experienced." He then shifted gears, and the mentor replaced the empath. He began to question her, his inquiries drilling down into the very heart of her technology. He was relentless, his intellect razor-sharp. He challenged her assumptions, poked holes in her logic, and forced her to defend her creation from every conceivable angle. It was the most intense intellectual examination she had ever undergone. But far from being intimidated, Ava felt exhilarated. She met every question with a confident answer, her passion and expertise shining through. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Your compression model is revolutionary," he said. "It's the key. It's not just an improvement on existing tech. It's a paradigm shift. That's what I invest in." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "I'm going to make you an offer, Ava. I'm not going to fund your company." Ava's heart plummeted. She felt the blood drain from her face. Nathaniel turned back to her, a twinkle in his eye. "I'm going to partner with you. I'm going to give you seed funding, $10 million for a 25% stake in Aura Innovations. But more than that, I'm going to give you access to my resources, my legal team, my engineers, my network. We are going to build this together." Ava was speechless. $10 million. It was a number so vast, so far beyond her wildest dreams, that it didn't even sound real. Tears welled in her eyes. Tears not of sadness, but of overwhelming, staggering relief. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Say you'll accept," Nathaniel said with a gentle smile. "Say you're ready to show the world what you've built." She nodded, unable to speak, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. The months that followed were a whirlwind. With Nathaniel's backing, Aura Innovations was born. Ava moved out of her tiny apartment and into a sleek, modern office space. She hired a small, brilliant team of engineers who looked at her with respect and awe. She was no longer a freelancer struggling to pay rent. She was a CEO, a founder, a visionary. Nathaniel was true to his word. He was more than an investor. He was a mentor and a champion. He pushed her, challenged her, but also protected her, guiding her through the treacherous waters of the tech world. He helped her navigate contracts, recruit top talent, and refine their go-to-market strategy. A profound respect grew between them, built on a shared intellectual curiosity and a mutual admiration for each other's minds. Ava blossomed. Shedding the last vestiges of the timid, uncertain woman she had been, she grew into her role with confidence and grace. She was a natural leader, inspiring her team with her clear vision and unwavering passion. The ghost of Mark Callahan and his cutting words faded, becoming a distant, irrelevant memory from another lifetime. She was finally completely Ava Monroe. While Ava was building an empire, Mark Callahan was busy enjoying the spoils of what he still considered his victory. The first year after the divorce was a celebration of his freedom. He sold the grand mansion, too many memories, he told his friends, and moved into a lavish penthouse apartment downtown with panoramic city views. He dated a string of women, all young, beautiful, and impressed by his wealth. His business, Callahan Imports, seemed to be thriving, and he made sure everyone knew it. He rarely, if ever, thought of Ava. When he did, it was with a vague sense of pity. He imagined her struggling in some drab apartment, working a menial job, a sad testament to her inability to function without him. He had heard from a mutual acquaintance that she was trying to start some little computer thing, and he had chuckled. It was so predictably Ava clinging to her pathetic little hobbies. He felt a sense of magnanimous satisfaction, confident that he had been right about her all along. He had escaped, and he had won. But as the second year began, subtle cracks started to appear in his perfect world. A series of bad investments soured, taking a significant bite out of his capital. A new competitor in the import market was undercutting his prices, and his profits were shrinking. The thrill of his bachelor lifestyle began to wear thin. The endless parties and superficial dates left him feeling hollow, a stark contrast to the genuine partnership he had once long ago taken for granted. It was during a lunch meeting with a potential client that he first heard the name. The client, a savvy young tech investor, was talking about the hottest new startup on the scene. "You've got to keep an eye on Aura Innovations," the investor said, his voice buzzing with excitement. "What they're doing with predictive AI is going to change everything. It's the most elegant machine learning protocol I've ever seen, and the story behind it is incredible." Mark feigned interest, nodding along. "Aura never heard of them." "You will," the investor assured him. "They've been in stealth mode, but they're backed by Nathaniel Reed. You know what that means. Anything he touches turns to gold. They're set to do a major public launch at the Innovate Forward Summit next month. It's the most anticipated debut in years. They say the founder is some kind of quiet genius who came out of nowhere." The name Aura snagged at Mark's memory. It sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. He dismissed it as a coincidence. The tech world was full of trendy, meaningless names. Still, the conversation left him with a strange feeling of unease. Nathaniel Reed's involvement was a big deal, the kind of deal Mark used to fantasize about for his own company. A week later, he saw the name again, this time in a major business journal. A feature article was titled, "The Aura Enigma: How Nathaniel Reed's New Protege is Set to Redefine Personal Technology." The article was filled with breathless praise for the company's revolutionary software, but it was frustratingly vague about the founder respecting their desire to remain private until the official launch. The founder was referred to only as A. Monroe. Mark stared at the initial and surname. A. Monroe. It couldn't be. He tried to laugh it off. The world was full of people with the last name Monroe. It was a ridiculous, impossible coincidence. His Ava, the woman who couldn't even manage their household budget, the woman whose big idea was a digital organizer. It was laughable. Yet a seed of doubt had been planted. He found himself secretly searching for information online. He found think pieces and blog posts speculating about Aura's technology, all echoing the same sentiment: it was a game changer. He saw the company's minimalist logo, a stylized A, and felt a cold knot form in his stomach. It was the same design he had once seen sketched in the margins of one of Ava's notebooks, a sketch he had teased her about. He started asking around his social circle. Have you heard of a tech founder named Ava Monroe? Most people hadn't. But one friend, a banker who moved in tech circles, had. Monroe? Yes, I think so, the friend said thoughtfully. Heard she's brilliant. Keeps a very low profile. Reed has her under wraps until the big launch at the summit. Why do you ask? No reason? Mark said, forcing a casual tone. Just a name I heard. He went home that night and poured himself a stiff drink, his penthouse feeling less like a palace and more like a cage. He looked out at the city lights, the same view Nathaniel and Ava had shared months ago. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture he refused to accept. His quiet, dependent, hobby-loving ex-wife couldn't be the quiet genius backed by a legendary billionaire. It was impossible. It had to be. He decided he would attend the Innovate Forward Summit. He needed to see for himself. He needed to put this absurd rumor to rest so he could go back to enjoying the life he had so decisively won. The Innovate Forward Tech Summit was the premier event of the year, a dazzling spectacle of ambition and capital. The main hall was a sea of industry leaders, venture capitalists, journalists, and hopeful entrepreneurs, all buzzing with an electric anticipation. Mark Callahan moved through the crowd, feeling a familiar surge of importance. This was his world, or at least it used to be. Today, however, he wasn't here as a confident player. He was here as a nervous spectator, a man haunted by an unbelievable possibility. He secured a seat with a clear view of the stage, his heart hammering against his ribs. The lights dimmed and a hush fell over the auditorium. The summit's host walked on stage and began the introduction for the keynote address, the most anticipated moment of the entire conference. For months, the tech world has been whispering about one company, one innovation poised to change the very fabric of our digital lives. The host's voice boomed. A company nurtured in stealth, guided by one of the most brilliant investment minds of our time. It is my profound honor to welcome to the stage the visionary, the legend, Mr. Nathaniel Reed. Nathaniel walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. He exuded a quiet, powerful charisma that immediately commanded the room. Mark watched, his mouth dry. This was the man who was supposedly backing Ava. It felt surreal. Nathaniel began his speech not with hype, but with a thoughtful analysis of the future of technology. He spoke of the need for innovation that served humanity, not distracted it. He was captivating, his words holding the entire audience in a trance. Mark found himself leaning forward, hanging on every word. For the past year, Nathaniel said, his voice dropping slightly, I have had the privilege of working alongside a founder who embodies this principle, a founder who possessed a vision so clear, so powerful, that it reminded me of why I entered this industry in the first place. We've all heard the rumors and the speculation about Aura Innovations. Today, the speculation ends. He paused, letting the tension build. The air was thick with it. Aura is not just another product. It is a new technological paradigm. It's a system that learns, adapts, and anticipates, freeing up our most valuable resource, our time and our mental energy. But the technology, as brilliant as it is only half the story. The other half is the architect behind it. Nathaniel smiled, a genuine, proud smile that reached his eyes. She came to me not with a slick pitch, but with a powerful idea born from personal conviction. She has built this company from the ground up with a rare combination of genius, resilience, and unwavering integrity. It is my great honor to introduce you to the founder and CEO of Aura Innovations, Ms. Ava Monroe. The name hit Mark like a physical blow. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. He couldn't breathe. The polite applause in the room sounded like a roaring in his ears. Through a haze of disbelief, he watched as a figure emerged from the side of the stage. It was Ava, But it wasn't the Ava he knew. The timid, hesitant woman who would shrink under his critical gaze was gone. In her place stood a woman of incredible poise and confidence. She was dressed in a simple, elegant dark blue dress, her hair styled professionally, her expression calm and assured. She didn't look like an imposter on the world stage. She looked like she owned it. She shook Nathaniel's hand and turned to face the audience, a small, confident smile on her lips. A giant screen behind her lit up with the sleek A logo he now knew so well. "Thank you, Nathaniel," she said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong without a hint of the tremor he remembered. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Ava Monroe, and I'm here to talk about the future of intuitive technology." Mark sat frozen in his seat, invisible in the darkened auditorium, yet feeling as though 1,000 spotlights were searing his skin. He watched, utterly mesmerized, as she commanded the stage. She was brilliant. She was articulate, funny, and passionate. She explained the complex algorithms of Aura in a way that was accessible and inspiring. She didn't just present a product, she presented a new vision for the future. The audience was captivated. The bored expressions Mark had seen on judges at that small competition were replaced by looks of awe and intense focus on the faces of the most powerful people in the industry. They weren't just listening. They were witnessing the birth of a star. He saw the way Nathaniel Reed looked at her, not with romantic interest, but with a deep, profound respect that was almost paternal. He was a mentor who had found his prodigy. The realization was a dagger to Mark's heart. He hadn't just underestimated Ava, he had been utterly and completely blind to who she was. The cute hobby he had mocked, the little project he had dismissed, it was a revolution, and he had let it walk out the door for a pittance. The presentation ended with a live demo that drew gasps from the audience. As Aura flawlessly rescheduled a hypothetical CEO's chaotic week in a matter of seconds, the room erupted in a standing ovation. Mark remained seated, a statue of regret, amidst a sea of celebration. The sound of the applause was a judgment, a deafening verdict on his own failure. He hadn't won the divorce. He had lost everything that mattered. The aftermath of the keynote was a frenzy. As soon as Ava and Nathaniel left the stage, they were swarmed by a crush of journalists, investors, and industry giants, all clamoring for a moment of her time. Mark watched from a distance as she handled the deluge with an effortless grace that was entirely new to him. She was no longer his quiet, unassuming wife. She was a force. He felt a desperate, irrational need to talk to her. What he would say, he didn't know. Apologize. Congratulate her. Beg. His mind was a chaotic storm of regret and disbelief. He slipped out of the auditorium and waited in the grand glass-walled lobby, knowing she would eventually have to pass through. After what felt like an eternity, she emerged flanked by Nathaniel Reed and a small security detail. She was laughing at something Nathaniel had said, her face bright and animated. She looked happier and more alive than Mark had ever seen her in their 10 years of marriage. The sight was another twist of the knife. He stepped forward, calling her name. Ava. Her laughter died on her lips. She stopped and turned, her expression shifting from radiant joy to a cool, unreadable neutrality as her eyes met his. The warmth vanished, replaced by the polite indifference one might show a stranger. "Mark," she said, her tone level, "what are you doing here?" I saw the presentation," he stammered, feeling foolish and small under her calm gaze. "It was incredible. I had no idea." A small, ironic smile touched her lips. "No," she said softly, "you didn't." Nathaniel Reed stood beside her, his presence a silent, protective barrier. He looked at Mark not with anger, but with a kind of detached pity that was somehow worse. He recognized him for what he was, a relic from a past his protégé had long since transcended. "Ava, we need to talk," Mark pleaded, taking a step closer. "What you've done, it's amazing. I'm so sorry. For everything. I was an idiot. I didn't see you. I didn't see what you were capable of." "What is it you want, Mark?" she asked, her voice devoid of the anger or hurt he had expected. That was the most painful part. There was nothing. No bitterness, no lingering resentment. Just a calm finality. She had moved on so completely that he no longer had the power to hurt her. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice cracking. Maybe there's a way I can be a part of this. I have business experience. I could help. I could invest." The words sounded pathetic even to his own ears. He was a struggling importer offering to help a $10 million startup backed by a billionaire. Ava looked at him, and for the first time he saw a flicker of emotion in her eyes. It was pity. "You had a chance to be a part of this, Mark," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You were there for 10 years while I was building the foundation. You could have been my partner. You could have been the one standing beside me on that stage. But you didn't want a partner. You wanted a subordinate. You didn't want to build my dream. You wanted me to decorate yours." Every word was the truth, and it cut him to the core. "The settlement I signed," she continued, "the one you thought was so generous it gave me one thing you never could, the freedom to become myself. You didn't lose anything in our divorce, Mark, because you can't lose something you never valued in the first place." She gestured to the company, the success, the new life around her. "This isn't a victory over you. It's a victory for me. It has nothing to do with you anymore." With a final polite nod, she turned and walked away, Nathaniel Reed at her side. Mark stood alone in the center of the glass hall, the sounds of the summit fading into a dull roar. He finally understood. His win in the divorce was the biggest loss of his life. He had fought for the house, the money, the tangible assets. He thought he had secured his future by getting rid of his dependent wife. But he had been the dependent one all along, propped up by an inheritance he didn't earn and blind to the true genius living under his own roof. Ava walked away with almost nothing, but she had carried the future with her, locked away in her mind and her notebooks. He was left with an empty penthouse, a struggling business, and the crushing public knowledge of his own monumental stupidity. He thought he had won, but he was just the fool who had thrown away the diamond, convinced it was nothing but a worthless stone. And so Mark Callahan's victory became his public shame. Ava Monroe's story wasn't one of revenge, but of powerful self-realization. She proved that true value isn't found in bank accounts or material possessions, but in the untapped potential that lies within us. Her journey from a belittled wife to a titan of industry is a stunning reminder that sometimes the greatest wins come directly after our most devastating losses. It shows that the people who underestimate us are often giving us the greatest gift, the motivation to prove them and ourselves just how wrong they were. What did you think of Ava's incredible transformation? Have you ever had a moment where you realized your own strength after someone counted you out? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. If this story inspired you, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Click the notification bell so you never miss an update.